everyone, welcome to episode 10. You didn't make the noise, Rock.
I know.
This is the episode I'm most excited about and you're not making the noise.
Sorry. Yee.
Thank you. So, originally I was supposed to be doing an episode on ghost planes.
Yeah.
And that's not the noise I wanted you to make. And to completely level with you guys, there is absolutely nothing that appeals to me about planes. I think they're really, really boring. Ships, on the other hand, hot damn, I love me a cool ass ship. Roxy said I can say ass.
It's a physical piece of your body, sure.
That's not the distinction you want to make with what words I can use. So, this episode is heavily inspired by The Longest Johns. Their song, Bones in the Ocean, nearly makes me cry every time I hear it, and Down and Drowned is an absolute banger, and it feels very, very fitting for this episode. I'm sure this inspiration of mine is of absolutely no surprise to poor old Rox, who has been forced to listen to me caterwaul along every time she has the displeasure of being in my car.
I will say, I do like one or two of their songs.
I'm aiming for all of them.
But you are obsessed.
Yeah. Before this episode drops, I will be releasing some of my Spotify stats to back this up.
I don't think anyone needs... I think we all believe you, but crack on.
It's like, what part of my life will I not pan over for this? So let's get into this then. Ships are a very famous phenomena, and without researching any, I could name 3 off the top of my head. The Flying Dutchman, the Mary Celeste, and the Calueche. The Flying Dutchman is a ghost ship that has been doomed to sail the seas forever, never reaching port.
Ooh.
Following in our trend of prophetic qualities to the supernatural, those who see the Flying Dutchman are said to be cursed to experience misfortune and that it is an ill omen to see. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are I should never have brought up Warning Apparitions as episode 1 because I feel like I've set a precedent and not everything needs to reference prophetic qualities.
Everything references the prophetic qualities.
Okay. I don't think a ship can foretell anything.
Oh, but a ghost can.
Like we said in the episode, if you're sat there going, yo, you are going to experience this specific thing, and then it happens, yes. But not if just like if you're seeing a ship in the distance, you're probably not paying attention to where you are going, so of course you're going to walk off the end of the pier. I thought you were gonna say, like, if you're on a boat and you're seeing a ship in the distance, you're not paying attention to where you're going. And I was gonna say, Rox, that's like, you'd want to know if there's a ship in the distance and you're travelling that way. Absolutely.
But I suppose if you fall off a pier, you can't really blame that on a Flying Dutchman.
No, you're just an idiot.
So, the most famous version of this tale says that the ship was captained by a gentleman called, I think it was Heinrich van der Decken, who decided to gamble on the lives of himself and his crew and try and round the Cape of Good Hope during a storm. Because of his actions, the ship is said to be cursed to follow that course for all eternity. You know, it was his negligence and lack of regard for his life and the crew's life that got them killed. So that would make sense. There have been some really notable sightings of the Flying Dutchman, including a sighting in 1881 by King George V. I'm going to read the log entry. It's not very, very long, but it's better if I quote it directly. July 11th at 4 a.m, the Flying Dutchman crossed our bows. A strange red light, as of a phantom ship all aglow, in the mists of which the light of the mast, spars and sails of a brig 200 yards distant stood out in strong reliefs as she came up on the port bow, where also the officer of the watch from the bridge clearly saw her, as did the quarter-deck midshipman, who was sent forward at once to the forecastle, but on arriving there was no vestige nor any sign of whatever any material ship was to be seen, either near nor right away to the horizon, the night being clear and the sea calm. 13 persons altogether saw her. At 10:45 a.m, the ordinary seaman who had this morning reported the Flying Dutchman fell from the topmost cross trees on the top gallant forecastle and was smashed to atoms.
Sorry. Smashed to atoms?
Yeah, it basically means he got utterly obliterated on the floor.
No, I gather what that means, but I didn't know someone could smash to atoms.
I think it's just an expression.
Yeah, right.
Other sightings of the Flying Dutchman include a near collision with a British vessel on a stormy night in 1835, only for the ship to vanish before collision. In 1938, a group of people in Table Bay in Cape Town reported seeing a vessel sailing towards the shore. And the most recent sighting of this vessel was during World War II, where a German submarine was said to have reported it through the east of Suez. The legend was said to have begun circulation in the 17th century, which is when the Dutch East Indian Trading Company would have been at its height. The story is said to be based on true events, but over time has had additional elements added to it, which I think is quite common with these sort of stories.
Yeah.
Now, the Cape of Good Hope is a notoriously treacherous and stormy section of sea. In fact, it was originally named the Cape of Storms by Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias. The waters are said to be incredibly dangerous with massive waves that cause many shipwrecks. The dangerous waters are said to be caused by transverse and longitudinal wave patterns. The wind direction changes depending on the time of year as well, and the winter winds are said to bring in moisture, cold fronts and stormy weather, whereas the summer winds are said to kind of blow away the pollution. So, considering the description of the Cape of Good Hope, I'm really not surprised that this tale is tied to that area. It seems like the Cape of Good Hope is really a bit of a ship graveyard. I'm going to move on to the next stories, and then we can kind of link back to this and look at the explanations. But to be honest, I feel like it should have stayed the Cape of Storms. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't really understand why we need to change that, but I would have been more interested to know what the indigenous people called it.
Yeah.
And let's go by that name, not colonisers' names.
Well, fair enough, calling me out for not researching what the original
Sorry.
was called.
But no, I think Cape of Storms makes a lot more sense than Cape of Good Hope, but they do also both make sense, like maybe because people when they're sailing through that are like, oh, good luck, good hope, I hope you get through there okay.
I think it was to make the area a bit more attractive for travel routes, but I'm not entirely
Cape
sure.
Storms.
Yeah.
No one's going through there.
No. Now, I'm not going to do too deep of a dive into the Mary Celeste, as otherwise this episode is going to be far too long. But to give a short and sweet summary, the Mary Celeste was a real ship that was found abandoned under very suspicious circumstances. The lifeboat was missing, there was no crew left aboard, 6 months' worth of food and water were left untouched, the charts were ruined, and the crew's belongings were undisturbed. It's regarded as one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time, and no one ever found out what became of the crew. In Treasury of Folklore, Seas and Rivers by D.D. Cheney, she mentions that there has been multiple sightings of a ship in the decades following its discovery. I haven't been able to find any of those sightings, but I think that the Mary Celeste is a true ghost ship. A ghost ship in the same sense of the meaning of a ghost town. Somewhere or something that has once been inhabited but is now not. And these types of ghost ships are not uncommon in the modern era, though they don't tend to be sailed ships like galleons, carracks, brigs or caravels. They tend to be smaller abandoned boats. I spoke to an acquaintance of mine who served in the Royal Navy, and he said that in certain parts of the world it wasn't unusual to see abandoned boats, as the crew may have been seized by pirates, arrested for drug smuggling, mechanical failures, or been knocked off their boats during a rough storm. In which case, the empty boats are left floating on the sea. And in this instance, I can imagine how unnerving it is to see a small boat, alone and empty on a vast ocean, rocking aimlessly with the waves. It sounds pretty creepy, no?
It does sound really, really creepy. I think one thing that I'm curious about is why were the charts ruined, but everything else was, like, pristine?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that make it such a massive mystery. Like, no one's been able to pinpoint what happened on the Mary Celeste. I mean, there's plenty of theories of murder and mutiny all put forward, but if they were leaving, they would have taken some of their possessions.
Yeah.
The boat wasn't smashed really with storm damage,
Yeah.
so why would a lifeboat have been used? No food was taken, all the food and water was untouched on the ship.
And if it was pirates, you'd think they'd probably try and take some of the supplies, or at least that's what I would do. Yeah, that's a weird one.
100%, and that's why it's considered the greatest mystery in maritime history.
Yeah.
I remember actually studying Mary Celeste in school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in primary. It's something that really deeply fascinated me. So, why don't we take a look at the Calueche?
Now, I've never heard of this one.
The Calueche is a ghost ship from the island of Chiloé, off the coast of Chile. This ghost ship is said to appear in a shroud of mist with beautiful, pristine white sails.
White sails, you say? Mm-hmm.
The ship is full of light, and the sounds of people partying and laughing can be heard emanating from it. The inhabitants of the ship are said to be the spirits of those who have drowned at sea, as well as kidnapped fishermen who have been forced to work as crew. In some versions of the tale, they are said to try and lure witnesses on board the ship to enslave, and you can protect yourself by hiding behind the ovilo tree or the wineberry tree. The ship is said to have been created by Milo Lobo, a half-man, half-sea lion being from...
What?
Huh?
A half-man...
Half-sea lion being from Chiloé folklore.
Okay, I guess we'll just skip over that.
What?
Mind blown.
It was created, but I don't know what...
What party ship has been created by this weird half-and-half sea creature?
Well, who's said to be the king of the sea.
Okay.
So, which I was getting into.
Sorry.
Sorry. The Milo Lobo lives at the bottom of the sea with his wife and their 3 children. The Pincoya, the Pincoi, and La Sirena Chilota, I think. Pincoya and Pincoi are also married, even though they're siblings, which isn't very surprising in folklore.
I mean...
in mythology, it happens quite a lot. The 3 siblings are said to guide the souls of the drowned sailors onto their ships, but they also have like other marine duties such as caring for the fish and ensuring that fish fertility levels kind of stay high.
Yeah.
What was giggling?
Just fish like having to like maintain fish fertilities.
I mean, it's a fundamental food source. For
No,
the islands.
totally.
Yeah,
I agree. It is a fundamental food source. It's just funny.
Interestingly, after the Valdivia earthquake in 1960, which is said to be the largest earthquake ever instrumentally recorded, at a 9.5 magnitude, there was rumours of a pact being made between the Calueche and some of the island's inhabitants, as despite the fires, the landslides, the floods and tsunamis, many houses in Chiloé were untouched. So I really like this tale from the folklore of Chiloé, and I know it's not quite so great for the living, but it really does sound like a good afterlife for those who have lost their lives at sea. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that a ghost party ship sounds baller.
Yeah.
You know what? When I die, I am going on ghost party ship.
So this is coming a bit out of left field, but have you ever seen the Studio Ghibli film, Pompoko?
I actually haven't. It's one of the ones I haven't seen.
Right. So the Calueche reminds me of a scene in that film. So spoiler warning, I guess, even though the film came out in like 1994. In the film, raccoon dogs are going to be displaced from their home by growing urban development, and their food and resources are becoming scarce. The raccoon dogs try and fight back with illusion magic, but are losing the fight. One of the elders goes a bit senile, and they make this kind of dancing cult where some of the raccoon dogs who can't do the illusion magic all board this large ship, and they sail off to die whilst partying and dancing the entire time.
Oh, okay, so this folklore is starting to permeate into pop culture.
And in Lord of the Rings, the elves embark on a voyage to Valinor, the Undying Lands. And though I don't believe this is considered death for them, I think that all of this can kind of show that ships are used to represent journey into the next phase of life, or in some cases death, and this seems to prevail across quite a few different cultures and references. Mm-hmm. Can you think of any more examples where this has happened?
Oh, I know in some places it is the thing to do to send off a body on a boat, and then you fire an arrow, and the arrow hits the body and sets it on fire. So I know that's sort of my thing about to do with death and boats. I think that symbolism of sailing away into another life is a very, very popular image. Yeah.
Definitely. And although we don't really like referencing Harry Potter in this podcast, if we think about when Harry is killed by Voldemort, he is at King's Cross Station to board a train. So it's the vehicles of transport that carry us across into the next life. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that as we move away from ships as a primary transport mode, in terms of like travelling great distances, we will probably see it used to represent that transition less and less.
Yeah, maybe we'll end up with you go to the other world in a plane.
wasn't that Lost? Then they were on a plane crash and they were all
yeah, and they end up going to like a ghost
purgatory
island.
or whatever. Yeah, we're finding quite a few examples of this sort of transport.
We're already there. Yeah.
And all of this brings us to our fourth and final ghost story of this episode. Now, this is the tale of the Welsh ghost ship, the Resolven.
What a name.
Yeah, I think that's actually the name of the town. Now, when I say ghost ship, I mean a Mary Celeste-esque type of ghost ship. In 1884, Royal Navy vessel HMS Mallard was patrolling the waters near Trinity Bay in Newfoundland.
That's in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the merchant ship, the Resolven, was spotted. She responded to no signals, and upon boarding her, the party found that the ship was deserted. A fire lit in the galley, food on the table, no sign of damage. The lifeboat, the crew, and the large sum of gold were gone. The entirety of the captain's, John James's, fortune. The crew were never seen again. The Resolven was a brig from Aberystwyth and sailed between Wales and Canada, transporting timber and cod. So, again, it's the whole abandoned ship theme that was similar to Mary Celeste. Now, what's interesting is, yes, things were taken this time in terms of the fortune and the gold, but the fire was still lit.
Yes, that means it must have been a recent...
There was food on the table.
Yeah.
If it was a bit of like a mutiny to try and steal the gold, there should be some bodies, but there was no sign of damage. The crew, the lifeboat gone, the crew gone, the captain gone, and his fortune gone. Food left on the table.
And there was no like signs of damage to the ship?
Not that I could read.
Weird.
Now, what I particularly enjoy about this article is that it was written by the great-grandson of the captain of the ship, Will Wayne. He actually has a Facebook page dedicated to the subject, and we will link this so you can go and check it out. In an interesting turn of events, the body of a man dressed in a captain's uniform was found ashore in Deer Harbour with no identification but a gold pocket watch. The body was found sitting beneath a tree on the top of a hill overlooking the sea. 2 brothers found the body and laid him to rest without informing the local authorities. It was apparently reported that one of the brothers was suddenly appearing significantly wealthier prior to the discovery of the body. A Newfoundland woman came across the website of Will Wayne and contacted him about a story that had been passed down in her family in regards to a body that had been found by her grandfather and his brother. And Will Wayne travelled to meet her and the brother, and they went to the site where the body was found. The article really frustratingly does not tell us the conclusion of this visit.
Oh, I want to know what happened. Was it his granddaddy?
I think it's quite an extraordinary coincidence that this woman just happened to find his website and was like listening back and was like, there was a story in my family of a body being found.
I mean, I do wonder if it's the other way around, that she knew this story and went for more of a deep dive on it.
Possibly.
And then found the website. That would be my logical chain of events. Or maybe she's just a bit weirder like us and likes to deep dive on the internet at 2 a.m.
Yeah, definitely. What I also think is really, really interesting is that the body wasn't kind of washed ashore. He was found sitting beneath a tree overlooking the sea.
So he was like propped up position.
He was
there.
sat up against a tree looking out on the sea, dead.
Okay, so that suggests foul play to me.
He was sat looking at the sea. He was a captain, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what do they say about sailors being married to the sea?
Sure, but that suggests foul play to me, that he's dead. There's no ID on him other than a gold pocket watch. And he's just there like...
If the motive was robbing him, why wouldn't they have taken the gold pocket watch?
Good point.
Which is why I think this is such like a really interesting mystery.
Sure.
But the fortune was gone, but the brother was suddenly appearing wealthier afterwards. So maybe the fortune wasn't gone prior to the body's recovery.
I do think that this sounds a little bit more like there is a logical explanation for it than the Mary Celeste.
But that could be a logical explanation for the Mary Celeste as well.
True, we just don't know
what it is, and I think that's what's so fascinating about these mysteries.
Sure.
Is that we know these are real ships, and they're called ghost ships in the sense that there is no living inhabitants, rather than them being like ghostly. The Flying Dutchman, a spectral, ghostly ship.
Yeah, weird.
So looking into this, I think, again, these are all considered ghost ships, but really there's real, actual ghost ships, and then there's fabled ghost ships. let's get into the kind of science behind this. For ships like the Resolven and the Mary Celeste, they are ghost ships because they've been abandoned. These are very real ship abandonments, and ship abandonments can happen for many reasons as listed above. I'm sure there are multiple other factors that could cause people to abandon their ship as well, which I just don't know about. So why do people see ghost ships like the Flying Dutchman or the Calueche? This one, tragically, is all down to physics. And I say tragically because I am poor at physics, and I can sense that Rox is going to ask me some real wrenches of questions.
I will try not to.
Thank you. People who see ghost ships, as in the fabled ghost ships, are most likely experiencing the joys of atmospheric optical phenomena.
What?
We will be looking at mirages.
Right, okay, yeah, I'm with you.
A superior mirage can be described as an optical illusion, but I don't think it's technically classed as an optical illusion. But it happens when there are temperature inversions. The air below the line of sight is colder than the air above it, and the light waves passing through this inversion are bent. So an object appears above. So an image of the object appears above the actual object. This is something that usually happens as like a winter phenomenon, and has actually rarely been observed in the UK. We've got some articles of ships that look like they're hovering in the sky.
That's where I've seen about it.
So in the application of oceans, it kind of occurs when the cold air lies closer to the sea with warm air above it. Another form of this superior mirage is the Fata Morgana, once again linked to the Legends of Arthur. Morgana Le Fay. We really, really can't escape them. I thought ghost ships, we for sure would be safe from King Arthur.
To be fair, I know that there is a story about like King Arthur having to travel on a boat across a lake to Avalon, which is also supposed to be the island of the dead, potentially.
Oh!
So, there's another link for you.
The man who does it all. So these mirages were described as being fairy castles in the air or false land, which makes sense because if, you know, depending on where the horizon is sitting, that sort of thing, it will just look like something's floating in the air. So sometimes the mirages can appear as floating, but not always. The appearance of a mirage is constantly changing. Sometimes it can look as though the ship is floating inside the waves, sometimes it's suspended above them. A real ship may be present but out of sight below the horizon, and a mirage is created of that ship above the horizon, which is where it becomes visible.
Yeah.
The image can also be duplicated and distorted, so it looks as though multiple ships are being stacked. The Fata Morgana occurs when the light waves are bent as they pass through the air layers of different temperatures. There must be a significant difference between the two temperatures, and it must be inverted. Cold air has a greater refractive index than warm air and bends the light waves downwards. The curvature of the light waves is then, in the inversion layer, stronger than the curvature of the Earth, which kind of traps the waves, which is called a duct. Now, to see a mirage, the observer must be within or below a duct. A duct cannot exist without there being a temperature inversion, and the duct must exist in order for the mirage to occur. So just to flick back quickly, refractive index is just a term and number used to describe the light bending ability of a material. So considering this, and what we know of the Cape of Good Hope, do you think this explains things? It's a ship graveyard, there's so many wrecks below the sea.
Yeah, and you said that in winter there's a specific wind that clears out the pollution of the area?
That's in the summer, but in the winter there's a lot of cold fronts and storms.
Okay, cool. So that could explain there's a lot of changing temperature. It's close to the equator as well, which would then explain the different temperature of things and everything. Yeah, that could explain it. I do think that with particular the Mary Celeste, the sighting you mentioned where they were like essentially running around like headless chickens because they were like, oh my god, a boat, and then they were like, no, there's not a boat. I do think that when
that was the Flying Dutchman.
Oh, sorry, the Flying Dutchman. I do think that when you are at sea for an extended period of time, I think it can be quite a lonely existence.
Yes.
And that I think seeing things is likely to happen. And yeah, I can believe this. I've seen a picture of one of the mirages, and it full on does look like the boat is just fully floating. Yeah.
And what's also interesting is that in stormy weather, you get a lot of, well, I'm sure you've seen it on the beach where the waves are crashing and there's that white rushing foam. I think those could be mistaken for sails in really choppy weather.
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfectly good reason. I will say, though, that it doesn't account for ghostly lights and partying, but those are probably just an exaggeration of a tale. As is often the case for these stories, there's an element of truth to them, but then there's also a large element of additional flavour added to make the story better. I've really, really enjoyed researching this episode. I've loved reading all of the stories and kind of reading a bit more about the physics behind it, though I'm not a physicist, so if there's any issues with my explanation, feel free to let me know, and we'll put out a post to correct it. Do you have any kind of final thoughts about this?
Yeah, so the Flying Dutchman, there's no evidence of it being real.
So with the Flying Dutchman, they think it's based on true events, but there was never a ship called the Flying Dutchman. Okay. However, that is a route that would have been done by the Dutch East India Trading Company, and we know it's a kind of a wreckage there from the amount of ships that go down. So based in true story, but not necessarily the correct name for it. And
the Mary Celeste is not said that part of the problem with that was that she passed through the Bermuda Triangle.
I don't recall that.
Okay, maybe I might be misremembering that. I just know that the Bermuda Triangle is like, there's been a lot of ghost ships that have come out of that section of the world.
The Bermuda Triangle is massive for, being considered a ship graveyard almost. Yeah. I've kind of tried to steer clear from it because I feel like I would get lost in reading more about the Bermuda Triangle than the actual stories themselves. But yeah, it might have been. I can't quite recall for that one.
Sure. I mean, I will just say one last thing on the Bermuda Triangle, is that I do think it's really, really interesting that it has the same reputation amongst nautical vehicles as it does aeronautical? Is that the right vehicles? So the fact that the phenomenon that happens to boats also happens to planes as well.
I mean, if we're considering what happens as like a weather phenomenon, then not really. I mean, because the waves are also controlled by strength of the wind and that sort of thing. So I'd imagine if it's really hard sailing through a strait because of how choppy the waters are from wind patterns, I imagine it would be just as hard to try and fly through it.
Yeah, I mean, I do genuinely think that it's probably just freak hurricanes and water funnels and stuff like that. So, no, but that's really, really interesting. I didn't know much about two of the three cases. I knew about the Mary Celeste.
Yeah, everyone knows the Mary Celeste.
Didn't know as much about the Flying Dutchman, and didn't know anything about the
Calueche.
Calueche, that's the one, yeah. I still think, though, if I die, party boat.
Yeah, it does. It sounds great for the people who have drowned, but it must suck to be kidnapped onto that ship.
I mean, do you think that it's something to do with the Fae?
I don't know enough about the folklore of Chiloé to make that kind of a guess. I don't know if they have their own Fae tales or if they're very much detached from the Fae.
I'd be interested to look into that a little bit more to see if maybe this is whether the entities that you mentioned are their version of the Fae, because that would then be really interesting that we've got another place with another instance of there are these creatures that will just up and abduct you for fun and parties and things like that.
It's not fun and parties to be abducted if they're working, yeah. No, definitely, I think that's something that could be considered.
Interesting. I've really enjoyed this, thank you so much.
I've enjoyed researching it. Thank you everyone for listening. If you have any thoughts or stories, places you'd like us to investigate, check out. You can reach us on Instagram, Threads, Reddit, and you can email us at scaredinthenameofscience@gmail.com.
And don't forget to tag us, #Sitnos, SITNOS.
It's been great, guys.
Thanks.